Next, let's have California, Carrie, Prejean. All right, you know what to do. Your question comes from judge number 8, Perez Hilton.
Are we worried?
You should be.
Vermont recently became the 4th state to legalize same-sex marriage. Do you think every state should follow suit? Why or why not?
Well, I think it's great that Americans are able to choose one or the other. We live in a land that you can choose same-sex marriage or opposite marriage. And you know what? In my country and in my family, I think that I believe that a marriage should be between a man and a woman. No offense to anybody out there, but that's how I was raised, and that's how I think that it should be between a man and a woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie.
Well, looking back on that, 10 years ago exactly to this day, how does it make you feel looking back on it?
Well, it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since I gave that answer on the stage that night. But hearing it and reliving it, which I try not to do very often, just because it sometimes upsets me, it just brings back all the raw emotions and feelings that I had that night, and just how excited I was to compete at Miss USA representing the state of California, and just excited to win Miss USA. I thought I was going to win. A lot of people, told me, you're the front runner, and I just felt it. I felt that good energy that I would be the next Miss USA, and to see all of my dreams shattered that night was definitely disappointing. But looking back now, that night was the biggest blessing in my life.
Right.
And not saying that I didn't have to suffer a tremendous amount of pain, but I learned so much from it, and I'm so grateful for it. But yes, that does sting a little bit to hear that, and to know that I was asked such a polarizing question, which
intentionally looked like
intentionally, too. Yeah, it was asked intentionally and so unfairly asked. So it's disappointing, but also, as a young 21-year-old, I didn't really know what political correctness was. But after that question, I learned that it was powerful enough to keep me from winning Miss USA.
Right. What a shame, because, to my view, you were displaying what a Miss USA should display, which was courage. Courage to say what you really believe, and authentic. You're authentic. You're telling the truth. And that's
right. And I was
representing,
right. And I was representing the state of California, which my state was, that was back, Prop 8 was, on the ballot and everything. And majority of people in my state were against it. And so I always was trained as, Miss California, you can answer any question, just remember the facts and remember who you are, where you come from, and what you believe. And so I was just answering it honestly to the best of my ability. And I even said, I don't want to offend people. And that was my way of saying, hey, yeah, you can do what you want. And I respect all people. But if you want to ask my opinion on what I believe, that isn't what I believe. And so I always tell people, when they ask me, about this years later, I always say it could have been any issue. It simply was an issue that me as a conservative, a Christian conservative, dared to speak out against what was popular at the time. And they couldn't believe that I did it.
Yeah.
And not only did they not believe that I did it, but they couldn't believe that I would not back down from it. And I think that is a really important thing, that I, went on to all the different networks and shows the following day after the pageant, after Miss USA. And Matt Lauer, Meredith Vieira, a bunch of newscasters asked me, do you regret this? Do you take this back? And I said, no. I said, I have no regrets, because I was simply exercising my freedom of speech and my freedom of religion. And that should be allowed in this country. Last time I checked, this is the United States. So, it was so confusing as a young 21-year-old. But now that I'm 31 years old, I look back now and I think, wow, we've come, it's been 10 years, but how far really have we come in this whole political correctness, world that we're living in? And so, now that I'm a mom, I have 2 little ones, and I want to really teach them the importance of standing up for what you believe in, no matter what the cost is. And that is something that I'm really proud of.
You're a great example of it. Excellent example. And you're welcome. And it's an excellent example of what we're talking about, of the trampling on your freedom of speech, trampling on your freedom of religion. And as you said, it's, you were only the first shot that fired in that whole politically correct war, so to speak. And the people that have had to go through it since then, I think have taken courage from, you're pioneering, being willing to speak out and stand up for what you believe. And as you said, it's only gotten worse though from the other side, the leftist side of things, because they've turned the heat up on pretty much everybody, as far as.
Oh yeah, I was called a Nazi. I was called a bigot. I was called the most awful names you could ever call a woman. And I was called these things by men, but yet the feminists were nowhere to be found.
Right. They didn't defend you, did they?
Yeah, they only support you when you go along with their agenda. It's not all women that they're for. It's select women, very small, a minority of women that they are for. They're not for, blonde beauty pageant contestants who are Christian conservatives. That's for sure. I did learn that. So.
Right. And
again, it's sad, but true. But I always tell people, Joe, I always say, it doesn't matter what you believe. There's people who believe in gay marriage. They believe in abortion. They believe in, all these different things. That's okay. We should not criticize and show hatred and name call and, incite violence and do all these things. We are all entitled to our opinions and our beliefs in America. We all are. I have friends who are gay. I have friends who are pro-choice. And we have dinner together. We enjoy each other's company. And at the end of the day, we know that we're not going to change each other's mind. So we might as well agree to disagree. And that's how it should be.
Right. And that's, again, what the country was founded on. It's founded on freedom of speech, freedom of religion.
And tolerance is a two-way street. I know you and I say that all the time. We talk about tolerance. And it is two-sided, I'm tolerant of other people. I expect them to be tolerant of me and my beliefs. And since when are you able to, punish a person, fire them, and severely attack them simply because they don't believe what you believe? I mean, how crazy is that? I mean, is that really where we are in our country?
And how did we get here?
And how did we get here? And so I think that's what I'm passionate about now. 10 years later, I'm raising my kids, I'm raising my family, and I've never, I've grown so much as a woman, as an adult, and as a Christian. And I've just learned, to truly love one another, but also, it is important to stand up for what you believe in a respectful way and show tolerance to people, even though they don't agree with you.
Right, and then that respect word, I think, is the most important one of everything. Again, and the United States is founded on the idea that people won't agree with everybody. I mean, again, it's a situation where we have a republic, a form of government, and we're going to, it's from the very beginning of the country, it's been understood that there's disagreements, but that's been the beauty of it, is that for over 200 years we've had our disagreements, but we've had our political contests, and there's been a peaceful transfer of power, and people may not like the person that's in office at the time, but they've respected them, and that's we respected President Obama when he was in office because he was a president.
He was the president, yeah.
What we see today, though, is very little respect.
It's all resistance. It's all resistance. It's all hate. It's all attacks. It's all things that the left loves to proclaim that they're about. They love to claim that they're about tolerance and they're about love and anti-hate and all this. But what do you see every single day? You see nothing but hatred coming from them. Nothing but hatred. And it's so disgusting and so un-American. It's really, really just, I can't even believe the stuff that I see on TV on a daily basis. The hatred and just the smear campaigning going on. And, as a conservative, if you don't agree with what they think, then you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're homophobic, you're all these things. It's like we're so immune to being called those things that it doesn't even bother us anymore. And,
Right.
you know, I mean, as a young 21-year-old being called a racist and a bigot and all this, I mean, it's frightening. It's sad. It was scary. It was, you know, you know, it was horrible.
Mhm.
But now we're so used to being called all those things simply because we just don't agree with them. And so I think their tactics, their days of you know, sexist, racist, homophobic, all, you know, bigot, all these things, those days of trying to use those as tactics are over, I think.
Yeah. Kind of like the boy that cried wolf. After a while,
Yeah.
it doesn't hold any water anymore, because back
Right.
in the old days, it did hold water because there actually was that kind of thing going on a pretty large scale. I mean,
Right.
racism was being practiced on a large scale, and that type of thing. So
Well, plus it's just their whole idea of, you know, if you say that you are for legal immigration, then you're a racist.
right, yeah,
You're a racist. No, you're a racist.
they
I mean,
conflate that.
yeah, it's absolutely insane, you know? I mean, we have a president who married an immigrant,
Right,
but yet everybody says, "Oh, he's anti-immigrant. He's anti." I mean, come on, it's just insane how far the left has gone, really
right,
mad. I mean, they've just gone wild with their ideas, and I think the American people are finally onto them and
yeah.
just don't buy it. So, I'm
It's not
grateful for
logical.
that. Right.
They don't use any logic in the things that they say and what they do.
Right. And
Again,
whatever happened to having like a civil debate, you know, sitting down and having a respectful civil debate and talking about issues and focusing on the certain issues without name calling and, you know, labeling people as racist, bigots, homophobic, Islamophobic. I mean, all these things. They just,
right,
that's the only way that they can put you in this box to try to label you as the most horrible things that you could ever label someone, just simply because your beliefs don't align with their beliefs. That's really
right.
what it comes down to.
Discrediting you through ad hominem, I think they call it, attacking
Right.
the messenger.
Because I'm pro, you know, marriage and pro traditional marriage, does that mean that I'm a gay hater? No, it doesn't mean that. But what does the left try to do? They want to label you, they want to put you in this box. And that's the only way they can try to discredit you is by labeling you as this horrible person. How dare you be homophobic? I mean, that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so
Right.
I think after all these years, you know, that's the frustration is just these labels and these things that people try to put on me. And it's frustrating because I'm not homophobic. I'm not any of the things that they've tried to label me as. But that's their way of shifting from the real conversation and let's have a civil debate and let's respect each other's differences of opinions without
Right.
the name calling. They can't do it. It's impossible for them.
Right. And you made clear at the very beginning of your answer to the question, you said, I think it's great that in this country we can choose for ourselves. You know, I mean, right off the bat, you were saying that you're open minded to what other people believe and their perspective and also their preferences. So
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
it
It really
definitely.
wasn't. It really wasn't that bad.
No, but they took it so much the wrong way, and then they reacted so
Well, and whatever
negatively.
happened to like that'd be like me asking you, you know, hey Joe, what's your favorite color? And then you say blue, and I say, oh no, you're a bad person. You cannot have that as your favorite color. You
All
know,
the
it's so insane, like to think that as an American, you're asked a question and you're not able to honestly answer that question without being told, no, you can't have that opinion. You cannot have that opinion. And
right,
I don't agree with you. And I'm here to tell you that you cannot, you know, believe what you believe. And not only am I going to tell you you can't have that opinion, I'm going to call you every name in the book. I'm going to harass you. I'm going to incite violence against you, and I'm going to ultimately fire you because of it.
right,
Since when is that okay in America? It should
right.
never be okay. Left, right, conservative, liberal. I mean, it should
That's
never be okay. It should outrage everybody.
that's really the essence of America, is that we have the right to say what we really believe without fear of repercussion.
Right.
And we totally disagree with other people what they say, but we respect their right to say it,
Right.
and would
Yeah,
never.
it's a scary place for conservatives right now, Joe. It's really, really a scary place. I mean, free speech, it's under attack, and conservatism is under attack, and it's not a good place.
Yeah, but I think I agree, but I think there's hope,
There
because
is hope.
yeah, people like yourself, people like me, and I think we represent a lot of people that aren't speaking out right now, that I
Right.
hope will start speaking out.
Right. And I'm so proud of the young people. Candace Owens, she's doing an incredible job. You look at her and you look at so many other young people who are catching on to things and who are finally, we're able to say, no, this isn't okay. You're not going to label me as a racist or homophobic or whatever it is, the labels they want to label you as. Sexist, exactly. That's the new one. Everybody's sexist, right? And it's just insane how, these labels, and they just try to put you in this box to try to, make you look like this horrible human being just simply because you don't agree with them. It's just insane.
Yeah, weaponized, I guess you'd call it politics, and
Right.
weaponized accusations, because it's guilt until proven, you're guilty until proven innocent. It's the opposite from what it has been in our history.
Right.
And again, you and I believe, are really all about bringing back the way it used to be, where you're innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly.
And again, you have the right, if you're my neighbor, to disagree with what I believe, and I will respect you for that.
Exactly.
And I expect you to respect me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the fair play that the fair play, I guess, example that America has always been about in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And your grandfather, my father, and many others have fought to protect that. And again, I think it's left
sacred.
up to, yeah, it is sacred, and it's left up to us, and hopefully a lot of other people that will join us in this, to stand up, stand up for those American traditions, stand up for that freedom, stand up for those rights, because a lot of people have given their lives to guarantee them to us, and now we need to guarantee them to the future as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm sure a lot of the viewers might be wondering what Carrie Prejean is doing next to Dr. Joe Malone. So can you kind of give a backstory as to how we sort of met and the partnership that was formed between you and I?
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, it was, it's been maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months ago now. I was just finishing off a first book, which dealt with positive relationships between young people, and dealt with a lot with sexuality and that type of thing. And really the essence of it was that basically the biblical plan is correct for humans. Again, I didn't go into it with that kind of intention to find that at all, but the cutting edge research that's coming in from the science world is basically showing that. And so I became ready to look to another book that really kind of brings that point out strongly. And I went back to some of the folks I worked with actually up at Princeton, and told them of my idea, and they connected me with a publishing company, and the publishing company liked the idea, so they asked me to take a look at some of their authors, because I told them I needed a female co-author for it. And they gave me a list. Actually, they gave me the whole list, and I went through it, and the different ones that I thought made sense, I told them about. And so they gave me the contact information on at least 4. And so I contacted several, and you were one of the ones I contacted. And I talked to some of the others and that type of thing, but they really didn't have the same vision and the same drive that I have for this. So it didn't work out with them. But when I spoke to you, actually I got, you emailed me back very quickly. And when we connected, I just knew that you were the one to to partner with for this project. So I had known of what you'd done. I'd known of the Miss USA situation, but I didn't know in detail on it. But I knew that what we were about here was going to take some courage in order to be able to do, and that you had the courage to do it, and you had the attitude of not backing down. And so it's my admiration for you has grown more and more as we've gotten to know each other better, and I feel really good about what we're doing, what we're about to launch here.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So tell me what it's like to be a university professor in these days with all the political correctness going on.
Well, that's a story. Just about 15 years ago now, I stepped onto the university campus after being away from it for a long time. I was in the fitness industry, and when I was on a college campus way back when, it wasn't nearly as politically correct as it is now. And even back in 2005, when I started in, it wasn't nearly as politically correct as it is now. But as time went on, I started noticing these strange things. And first thing I noticed, again, coming from the fitness industry, everybody in the fitness industry, the people that we were working with, they were all interested in what's physically correct. When I got onto the campus, I realized that they were interested in what's politically correct. It didn't matter if it was physically correct or not. And that intrigued me because I didn't understand why they didn't know why they didn't want to know what the facts were according to the science. Along the way, again, from my background in the fitness industry, I'd worked with a lot of women clients. And so I'd realized that there was a big difference in the way they did things, the way they thought, physically, their goals, and what they were trying to get out of their training, that type of thing. So I proposed this women's personal conditioning class at the university I was at. And miraculously, after a year and a half, it was approved. And so for 5 years, I had this women's personal conditioning class. And actually studied it. I did research on them, and the class was very, very successful. 2/3 of the young women that were taking personal conditioning chose that class as opposed to the co-ed class. But the other thing I learned as I went along was that it wasn't politically correct to have a young women's personal conditioning class, even though it made sense on every other level.
Now that I have kids, I've sort of been in the shadows a little bit in these last 10 years, raising my kids and everything. And here I am now, a mom of these 2 little ones who are going to grow up in this country where there's so many things that bother me, that
Yes.
bother a lot of people. And it's up to us as conservatives to fight back. The days
Right.
of us just sitting back and letting them take over are over.
Right.
We do it in a very graceful, respectful way, but it's time that we fight back. And so we got to stand up to this whole hateful, just this whole left wing, really radical agenda who are trying to push this on our kids. And you saw it firsthand being a professor, but here I am as a mother thinking, what kind of society are my kids going to grow up in? What kind of, they go to public school now. And so I have to be really on top of things. And I encourage all mothers and fathers to really be involved in what their kids are learning and
Right.
to push back on things that are being shoved down their throats because, we're the parents. We're the taxpayers. We
Right.
pay their salaries. So, if you see something that you don't believe in, I encourage people to stand up and to go to the school. And if you're shut down there, go to the school board. I don't care what it takes, but we need to push back because this is our future's at stake, and our little ones really deserve a good future. So
Yes. Yeah, I've got grandkids in the same boat. So I totally agree, and that's part of what inspired me to do this in the first place and look for you. And again, I didn't know it was going to be such a great matchup when I was looking, but I think it's really been a godsend. You've been really a godsend. And
thank
and the other thing I think that you would agree with me on is that a big part of our focus is going to be on that marriage and the family, basically. Promoting marriage and even before that, the whole hookup culture situation on campuses. A lot of, especially the young women, are not happy with hookup culture. I've been surveying, and I mean, it's clear that there's a lot of dissatisfaction, but a lot of them think there's no other, recourse, basically. And
right.
the powers that be are telling them. I mean, they're basically just, giving them condoms and giving them advice about how not to get pregnant or catch an STD. Other than that, they're inferring that they should be sexually active and that there's something wrong with them if they're not sexually active. So I think there's a lot of room for leadership on university campuses to tell these young people, no, it hasn't always been this way. And it hasn't been this way really more than about 10, 15 years. And we used to have a situation where people would get to know each other, go out on dates, create a relationship, eventually get engaged and eventually get married. And at a lot younger ages than they do now as well, with the 28 for women and 30 for men marriage time. So there's just a lot of craziness going on out there. And for the most part, pushed by the left to really get a different kind of society than we've had in the past. And I think you'd agree with me that our society in the past is, it's been great, for want of a better word. Again, my dad and uncle fought in World War II. My brother was in Vietnam. Our son Kyle was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so there's people that have given their lives for the country that was built, before 2000. And basically, again, we need to make sure we keep those values and those traditions that have gone on from the past, and don't allow this leftist kind of sexual anarchy, for one thing, to take over our society and really ruin what we've had from the past. Because I know you've got a beautiful family now, and I've been blessed to have a beautiful family that's a little further along than yours, but less than half of the population now is married in America. So it's one of those things where brings tears to my eyes. It's one of those things that that basically, given another 10 or 15 years of what's happened in the last 10 or 15 years, it'll be very, very destructive on our society, and what our society really works off of. The cornerstone of society are great marriages and the resulting great families. So I think you'll agree with me that we're going to focus hard on that area, and I know you'll be a great leader and a great role model for the young women that I've been dealing with all these years, as far as, hey, you don't have to hook up, you don't have to do all these things where there's no relationship at all, and you don't have to even be sexually active while you're in college and that type of thing. Everybody gives you that message, the media gives you the message, but it doesn't have to be that way. It hasn't been that way in the past.
Right. And I love the research that you've done. I've read a few of your interviews with a lot of these young women, and tell us a little bit about what these women want. What are these college age women who, are in their 20s. What did you find in your research? Share that with us a little bit, because I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, that's what I've found, and I'm finding is that they're not happy with the relationship climate and the culture that's there now. And when they have gotten in a relationship, a lot of them have gotten cheated on, for one thing, and so that has a tendency sometimes to make them back away from it. But there's really a lot of them are not even participating in anything. I mean, they may be hooking up, but they have no meaningful relationships going in their lives. And there's just been so many disappointing stories about, they had a sexual interlude with a young man in the evening, and, he won't even stay through the night, that type of thing. And there's just, I guess when I had the women's classes, where I had almost all women in the class, I actually had 5 guys that took the class over the course of 5 years, because they weren't kept out of the class. It was just called Women's Personal Conditioning. But the women I had in the class, there was just a lot of disillusionment, and they were really glad to be able to come someplace where they were just all women for the most part, and share these kind of things amongst each other. And I saw a lot of heartbreak, I guess that's the way I would put it. And no matter, the research that I've done shows that humans are just like we think they are. There are differences between women and men, and women, more than men in many cases, in most cases, need to have that bond. They need to have a relationship, and a relationship they can trust. And again, the old school idea of, okay, get to know somebody, start dating, get closer, get engaged, get married, have kids eventually, in that order, rather than cohabiting, hooking up, then cohabiting, having kids before you ever get married, if you get married at all. The first alternative has all the science behind it as far as the benefit goes. And also it's the most prosperous, because even the money they make, the amount of money they make, the amount of support they have from both sides of the family, and all of those things. It's one of those things that, again, it's clear, but if you go on a college campus or you go into a high school, you're not going to hear that story being told. You're going to hear all these other varieties of sexual activity that are being, espoused, so to speak. Every crazy thing that you can think of, but nothing about marriage, and nothing about long-term relationships. So yeah, it's very much inspired me. And again, being around those young women showed me that they need a leader. They need somebody like you, Carrie, to be a role model for them. And somebody that could show them the success that comes with playing it straight, and again, I'm not saying that either one of us have lived perfect lives. I know that I haven't, And
No.
I've learned things along the way.
Right.
And these days, you know, from what I've learned and from my research, and that the research actually helped me. The book that I wrote helped me to live a better life and have a better marriage and to be a better person, better man, better husband. But they need to have role models, and they need to have hope that can be different, because the research shows that it goes against their instinct. Their instinct as a woman is to not be be sexually active, but their instinct is to find a man eventually and get serious with them, and the man gets serious with her, and they commit to each other, they form this family, and then again you have a successful society off of that.
Right.
You have so much problems when you don't have those strong, solid marriages.
I agree 100%. And I think just as a woman, you know, I think we are forced with this whole, you know, the feminists have, you know, forced us to be in this like brutally sexualized, you know, they've sexualized us in a way. And so, you know, they're telling us, you know, oh, you can do whatever you want, and you're a woman, you're equal with a man. And, you know, I'm all for, you know, gender equality, but I think that we do have certain roles. And, you know, you being a doctor, you can scientifically prove that we are different, and there are certain roles that we play as women and men. But I don't think that this sexualized, you know, world that we're living in, you know, with celebrities and movies and pop culture and all those things where it's so sexualized, and whatever happened to having an innocent, you know, healthy, normal, you know, view of a woman as herself without it being sexualized, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. On the campuses, the feminists, again, which dominate the campuses, and you could say in the media these days, and so many places, you know, they're telling these young women, if you're not as sexually aggressive as young men, then there's something wrong with you. Then you're not liberated. You're oppressed. You're repressed. You know, and again, I can give them the science on the differences between males and females. And again, there's some crossover, you know, I mean, there's some males that are, you know, at the low end of testosterone levels that'd be more similar to women's approach to things. And then there's some females at the high end of testosterone that would have some behaviors that are, you know, more similar to the guys. And also something like bipolar, you know, affects a female, because a manic female will have high sex drive, you know, that'll be unusual for a female. But yeah, generally, I mean, again, about 80 to 90% of your cases, those rules are going to apply, that men and women are different. And really, when you look at, we're complementary. You know, the woman's strengths and weaknesses really go well with the man's strengths and weaknesses. And when you put them together in a marriage, you have a really strong unit. We weren't, and I think you'll agree with me, we weren't meant to live in most cases by ourselves. We're meant to live with that other one special person in most cases from the opposite sex, and build that little civilization that has more, you know, little people coming to it as the children are born, and really create a situation where there's bonds all the way around that benefit everybody, and then that can be replicated, you know, in the next generation, replicated again, and it's just such a beautiful thing when it's done right, and it can be so heartbreaking when it's not done right.
I agree. I'm sure a lot of the viewers out there are thinking, you know, wow, you know, that girl was on stage in front of millions of people and dared to speak out. Well, a lot of people listening, you guys are going to have an opportunity someday to maybe, you know, boldly speak out on different things where you're just in your little circle of friends, or you're in your, you know, work environment. And I encourage you to speak out, because now is the time. We have to speak out as conservatives, because now it's more important than ever, you know. And so political correctness is something that I didn't know about back then. I know a lot about it now, and I hate it. And I want no part of it. And so I think a lot of Americans are onto it too, and they don't like it either. And I think that's why they elected Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I think that there's a silent majority, literally now, that agree with, you know, everything you just said and what I've been saying, because again, we've moved across from what we were lifetime conservative Democrats, and I'm sure that we're not the only ones that have done that, and I'm not the only probably professor that's ever spoken out, against, because that's basically what I ended up doing. I ended up not agreeing with him, but not going along with him. I could have done the same thing as far as
and look what happened to you.
Right. So, you get drummed out of whatever you're in, and these things where these people are just accused of something, and then they get forced out of their job, and again, sometimes it may be true and some days it may not be, but due process has always been required up to this point in our history to make to life, liberty, or property, to be taken away from you. So,
and another good point too is, I see these, you hear it all the time on TV, how, people wearing Make America Great Again hats.
Yeah.
Since when is wearing a Make America Great Again hat offensive? Since when are you have to be scared? I mean, here I have one up here in my office right here. Actually, it's signed by President Trump. And I think that is so sad that we as Americans have to be fearful of our life for simply wanting to make America great again. Shouldn't everybody want that?
It seems pretty clear and pretty simple, but yeah. But that's where they're coming from, and again, it's so not American, because really that's what makes America special, is our founders, the people who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and then the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, those first 10 amendments, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, First Amendment, freedom of religion, those things are what make America special, and what's made America strong all these years.
Right.
People can come here from anywhere in the world. They can be any color. They can have even practice any religion, and they're respected, or they should be respected, for being able to do what they think is right and say what they think is right.
Right.
And I don't see us, the white straight majority, condemning them for that. But it's moved to the point where the white straight majority is being condemned for just about anything that it does, as racist, sexist, fill in the blank, homophobic, this, that, or the other. And that's what's wrong, is people should be able to practice their beliefs and be respected for that. Is respect. There's a lack of respect. So, but I do think that in many cases, and I know there's some exceptions, but in many cases, the white straight population, and even us white straight males who get everything blamed on us.
I know. What's it like to be a white straight male?
Yeah, it's not a good time right now.
You got about 10 strikes against you.
Well, that's what that other student was saying. It must be your fault because you're privileged. So, but
privilege, right?
Yeah, but it's one of those things where she didn't really know any more than what her professor was telling her. Again, she was being indoctrinated. She was just repeating it. So it wasn't so much, I think, organic from her. It was just, it's the system. The system is putting that out. They don't give people a fair chance. And that's totally against what Martin Luther King Jr. and all of that whole movement was about, which was about, the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So what we've come to is such a... it's such a mocking in a lot of ways as to what the civil rights movement was actually about. So there's a lot of sad things that are, that we're describing right now with our present, our current environment. But again, I think that you and I, and hopefully a lot of others that are listening to this, are getting the idea of what we need to do to change it. That's what we're all about, is, PC resistance, PC defiance. There's lots of ways you can put it, but just the general idea you said earlier, get back to American tradition, get back to what's made America great. And even if you're a Democrat, sitting here listening to this, like I was, you can change. You don't have to go along with the stuff they're saying, the Green New Deal and white privilege and I don't know, the other stuff that's the crazy stuff that they keep coming up with all the time. That's really nowhere near what the Democratic Party has been all these years, as far as it's been about. So,
and since when is the American flag offensive? You hear that, when you see American flags and people say, oh, I don't know if I want that in front of my house. I have one proudly that I hang in front of my house because this is the greatest country in the world. And I'm very proud to be an American. And it's really cute. On a little side note, my little 6-year-old, when he sees an American flag, he says, "Oh, look, there's Trump's flag." And it's so cute that he associates that with him because, now more than ever, we are so proud of our country and we're so proud of the economy and the things that are going on. But there's still some things that we, you and I think that we're on the same page with, that we really, need to get out there and try to help and influence other people in the right way.
Right, because we've gone off the rails in some areas since the mid 60s. Again, there's been some good things. Again, like I said, discrimination when it actually was around, towards especially African Americans, that needed to be dealt with, and it has been dealt with. It has been. It's totally different than when my dad was young, and there's a whole total difference between me and my dad. Because my dad, I don't think would have ever voted for Obama or somebody like Obama. So, and not necessarily, well, again, I won't say any more on that, but I think you get the idea. Things have changed.
Right.
And it's time to acknowledge that, and it's time to move on. Post-racial, I think is where we need to go. But the people who should be most interested in it, I see, they racialize everything. But again, I understand why, because they gain their power from it. It's a power structure type of a situation. It's not. When I was on the college campus, things didn't make sense because they didn't want to know the logically correct answer. They needed the answer that was going to allow them to continue to wield power.
Exactly, and that's what it's all about. It's the power. It's
getting people riled up, at a situation that isn't even realistic. So yeah, I think opening people's eyes, Carrie, and especially the young people. And again, as I said earlier, you especially being a role model for young women, because the research again, my research again is showing clearly that young women, pardon the phrase, are the ones that are most getting screwed over in this environment of this supposed freedom for young people. Young women are the ones that are getting the brunt of the bad side of it, and so again, that has to be challenged. It has to be. The reality and the truth has to be brought out, because the scientific reality is there. They just don't want to know about it. They don't want to hear about it. They want to hear about science when it comes to climate, but they don't want to hear about it when it comes to sex differences. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's been a pleasure talking with you, and it's an honor to work with you, and I'll look forward to more.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Miss Prejean. And again, in case I didn't say it, I'm proud of all you've done. I mean, for a 21-year-old, that was a great example of courage.
Thank you. It was all part of God's plan to give Him all the glory.
I agree.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, we hope you have been enjoying our videos. Please subscribe to our channel, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So please leave the comments down below.